summer, one that has already generated some headlines and some raised eyebrows. In the Wake of Wettlaufer will run at the festival next summer for a month, and the question has already been asked, is it too soon? The inquiry into Elizabeth Wettlaufer wrapped up a month ago, and it wasn't that long ago that the case itself played out, where Wettlaufer pled guilty, was sentenced to life in prison for the deaths of 8 seniors. Here's the thing. We live in a world where people only read headlines and base their reaction on those headlines. So I saw some reaction the other day. People were upset about this play, but when I went to read the synopsis of the play, it's different than you might think. It's not about Elizabeth Wettlaufer per se. It's about a group of siblings who are looking for a long-term care home for their father, and they realize one of the homes they're considering is one of the homes Wettlaufer killed in, and goes from there. To talk about the play, we're joined by Gil Garratt, the artistic director of the Blyth Festival. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, I'm so grateful, Devon.
What made you want to do a play that it's not about, but deals with Elizabeth Wettlaufer and some of the issues we've seen come up in home care in Ontario?
Well, I think this is the incredible and salient point. I mean, really, what we are seeing happen in the wake of what happened with Elizabeth Wettlaufer is we are seeing an exposing of elder care in our province. I mean, and really in our country. I mean, we're entering into an unprecedented inspection, I think, and for us as a society, where we know that our elders are continuing to live longer and the world is changing, we need to embrace a conversation where, I mean, I think part of what, if there is any silver lining to what has happened, it is the exposure that has come through the inquiry. I mean, I've been following the inquiry quite closely, obviously, and one of the things that has been reiterated over and over again are the depth of systemic issues at play, which are not to say that it's because of the system that Elizabeth Wettlaufer was able to do what she did, but it is to expose some of the disturbing challenges. And I would also say in the creation of the piece, and anybody who knows the Blyth Festival knows that we are a charity. This is not a commercial venture. We're not profiteering off of the story. This is a piece that is being created in order for a community to have a conversation. And I think that people who feel too acutely the pain of this conversation should avoid the show and should avoid that conversation. But for those who are ready to engage, I think there's a lot to talk about. We've been interviewing nurses and PSWs who are working in assisted living. Some of the stories I've heard have been, unsettling, but even just simple things like a cousin of mine who was a nurse up in Sudbury who just told me that she's been working in assisted living for many years, and she's now preparing herself for what she sees as imminent layoffs all throughout nursing in Ontario. So she's looking at, the March budget, and she's going, what do I need to prepare myself for? And I think these are precarious times, and we need to have a very sober conversation, and in some ways this has become a catalyst for that.
There will be people, I'm sure you've heard them, who say this is too soon. But again, like the synopsis isn't about Elizabeth Wettlaufer. It's about a group of siblings, and they're going through the process of finding, a home for their elderly father, and then they deal with family issues and issues that arise. They realize that Wettlaufer worked at one of these places they're looking at, and so that's really where the story goes. But people see the name Wettlaufer and they think something different. How do you determine if something is too soon or not?
That's a really critical question, and I would say that in many ways, that has to come back to the individual who would want to attend the show. As an artist, I think that the thing is, what has happened here has changed this province. I really believe that. I don't think that we are going to be able to look at elder care, which affects all of us. All of us have parents. All of us have grandparents. We all have family to care for. And this has ramifications for all of us. And I think that really for me as an artist, the necessity of having this conversation is And I think it's important too, as you point to, the play in no way is there to sensationalize Elizabeth Wettlaufer and what she did. In no way is it to. It's not a play that is somehow acting out all of the crimes. This is a play about family and about compassion and about the next generation trying to decide how they're going to care for their father and what are they going to do and what are the choices that they're faced with, and then having made these choices, which are incredibly difficult. I mean, the number of families that really fall apart as a result of having to make these kinds of choices, they are then suddenly faced with the anomaly of what this woman did. And I think that the extraordinary thing with the inquiry is the depth to which the commission is really trying to inspect the condition of the system. And that's a really, sadly, had this not happened and had she not done what she did, I don't know that we were about to have a really sober commission look at assisted living in this province. That wasn't on the docket. We weren't about to have this conversation. And in many respects, I think these issues are so close to the bone and so close to the heart. I mean, this is about caring for our loved ones. And I would say that the core of the play is an exercise in compassion. It's about how do we exercise the most compassion for our parents.
Did you reach out to the families of the victims, and if so, what did they say?
Yeah, we've been in touch with several, and amazingly, we have been so blessed. People have been so encouraging. I don't want to name names here, but what has been incredible is we've heard over and over again, please tell this story. This story needs to be heard. They're afraid of the news cycle. They're afraid of the way that these kinds of things grab headlines and then vanish, and that they believe that every Canadian needs to be hearing this story and thinking about what its impact is. And that's been, that kind of encouragement and the personal sacrifice that these folks have made to talk to us. It's not an easy conversation for them to have, but people have been so generous and patient and truly kind. And from what we've been told, and I'm not going to say this is a universal response, but what we've been hearing over and over is please tell our story. Please tell this story.
For anyone who's known, the festival hasn't shied away from, strong stories in the past. We did something on Dudley George, something on Stephen Truscott earlier this year, something on the Pigeon King ran. What's attractive about these types of stories to you guys?
I would say it's about being relevant. Really, for me, it's one of the most important things that we do at the Blyth Festival is we try to have truly relevant conversations. The work that we're putting on the stage is about this community and about what is on this community's mind and what we care about. And for me, that's pure mission work. That really feels like the kind of calling that a great storyteller can answer to. And the Blyth Festival has really put itself forward to tell some pretty uncomfortable stories in the past, but they've been, often watershed moments. And I would take something like Pigeon King as a great example. This was a story that a lot of people were very hurt by, and the catharsis that it actually offered the community. The number of people who had personally been affected by what Arlen Galbraith did, who then got in touch with us over the course of the run of that show and thanked us over and over for what we had brought them in terms of a public healing. And that's the highest calling, I think, as an artist, to be able to be that in communion with a community.
In the Wake of Wettlaufer runs next August for a month. It's only one of many, but it seems like it's shaping up to be one of the featured plays of the year that people are going to be looking forward to.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to really strike a chord, and I'm hopeful that the people for whom it doesn't speak to them, then they shouldn't come to it. And those who are ready to have that sober conversation, the doors of Blyth are open.
You've kind of touched upon these kind of aspects throughout the entire interview, but what do you hope people take from the play?
I hope that what people take from the play is that we are living in an era where the necessity to think compassionately about each other, unfortunately, we're living in an era where I think that's being compromised all over the place for whatever reasons, whether you're talking about a for-profit elder care system, whether you're talking about the contemporary state of politics. We're in a moment where the sense of where compassion and empathy are in short supply, and I think that this really is a play that is about compassion.
Gil Garratt, I certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Devon. I'm grateful.
That's Gil Garratt, Artistic Director of the Blyth Festival. We need to pause. When we return, more of London Live. This is Devon Peacock in for Mike Stubbs on Global News Radio, 980 CFPL.